Hello, everyone. Welcome to Twin Talk. Hi, Nicole.
Hi. How are you?
I'm really well. How are you?
I'm good.
That's good. Well, welcome everyone to podcast 2. We're really excited to be back. We hope you enjoyed the first one. And for this one, we thought we would share our stories because both Nicole and I are twins living with autoimmune disease.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so just to give you guys a bit of context, Nicole's got Crohn's disease and she was diagnosed when we were 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And Nicole, Crohn's disease is an autoimmune disease. Is it the bowel, small intestine and stomach? Is that right?
I'll explain Crohn's disease just briefly. Crohn's disease is where your immune system thinks that there's a bug in your stomach, large intestine or small intestine, when there's actually not. So
it's an overreaction of the immune system.
Correct. So your immune system attacks your body as it does with yours. So my large bowel, small bowel and stomach and joints were affected.
Yeah. Okay. And then I've got multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune disease of the brain, spinal cord, and optic nerve. So super interesting. And
isn't it?
We went through our diseases at very different ends of the spectrum of age. When Nicole was 11 and I was 24 when I was diagnosed, although my first symptoms were probably around the age of 19. So why don't we dive in and talk about our diagnosis and what we experienced, maybe our symptoms, how we got through that, how we transformed our conditions to go into remission, which I'm so grateful. We are both in remission and have been for a long time. Absolutely. And maybe, just to share some tips and tools on other people that might be listening that are experiencing autoimmune disease, if we can impart any wisdom there. So let's do it.
Okay. So very briefly, I was diagnosed at age 11, but probably from the age of 10 onwards is when my symptoms started. So I remember being at school in grade 6 and needing to go to the toilet more, having more bowel spasms, which were quite painful, and coming home after school and jumping straight into mum and dad's bed and just sleeping. So I had a lot of fatigue. Then I started bleeding more profusely from the bowel, and I wasn't diagnosed for a good 6+ months. So it allowed the inflammation to spread, in my case, to every joint in my body, which then caused massive weight loss and malnutrition, and basically all my muscles faded away till eventually I ended up in a wheelchair and not able to walk.
Was that also from the side effects of the medication you started on as well?
So not only that, but the massive doses of prednisolone plus many other tablets that I was on was creating a lot of issues. So I would have a big moon face and a huge bloated tummy, a lot of fluid retention everywhere with tiny little legs and arms. But the pain in the joints was really quite full on, as well as the bowel spasms. So whenever you go to the toilet, it was very painful and I'd quite often pass out. But I ended up being hospitalized in Easter of when we were 11 in 91 for pain control for that.
And what was the first lot of medications they put you on?
The prednisolone. So I ended up being on 100 milligrams a day. Gosh, I can't even remember the names of all the other ones, but there were so many.
What were they for? Like, if you think
stomach, just also when you're on one tablet to reenact that one, and when you're on one tablet, it causes that side effect, so you have to have that tablet for that side effect. And
how many tablets did you end up being on? Like when it was like at its most?
I remember it was like 80 a day at one point. I was rattling as I walked. It was full on.
And that was to control the rheumatoid arthritis as well as the Crohn's. And
no, it wasn't really. There was no pain control. So it was really just to treat the Crohn's, of what they knew at the time on how to treat Crohn's.
So other than prednisolone, what was the other medication if you're on?
I can't remember what they're called. I remember there was, it was a long time ago.
No, I know. I'm just
it was a lot.
Maybe for inflammation, they were treating you for inflammation. And
that was a prednisolone, really. It wasn't. There were other ones as well. I must remember them on another podcast, but it was a mainly tablet one. There was no infusions at that time. They do have infusions now, but so I was on a lot of tablets and very malnourished and in a lot of pain, particularly with my joints. It was a huge issue.
Can I ask you, what was your lowest point of the illness? How old were you and what was the most difficult thing that happened?
No, there's many. A few come to mind.
But with your illness, like when Crohn's was at its worst, how old were you? What was going on?
I was 11. It was Easter time, and I was at my worst of the worst. I couldn't walk. I couldn't even have a sheet on me. I couldn't even lean back with my shoulder blades on something. It was just so painful. So I was in the Royal Children's Hospital and quite delirious from the pain. You end up getting quite delirious. It was probably a good 8 months in that I was in chronic pain 24/7 with a lack of sleep and no nutrition.
And did you have a lack of nutrition because your small intestine wasn't absorbing
any nutrients or food? Correct.
But were you able to eat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was eating a lot because when you're on prednisolone, you get really hungry. Get very hungry. Yeah. So
So I remember you were in hospital for much of our childhood, and my memories of you being there were very stressful because obviously we were twins, and before you got sick, we did everything together, and we were always together, and we lived in a really fantastic, happy life, and and then when you got sick, it was just like I lost my right hand, and we couldn't go to school together anymore, and it was
really hard.
I remember I also
the separation was really hard.
Yeah, the separation was hard. And I also think the separation was hard because we were also separated when we were born because we were 6 weeks prem. And
that's right. In the mini cribs, that was our first separation. Our second separation.
To explain, like we were put in separate mini cribs. People won't know.
So we were 6 weeks prem.
Yeah, and so they didn't know any better back then. They, for some reason, put us in separate mini cribs for a couple of weeks, or maybe it was the whole 6 weeks.
Yeah,
I think we already had that sense of abandonment, and then so we did everything together. Everything was cool, and
we had a lot of fun when we were kids, didn't we? We played tennis every day outside in the court.
We were very active.
We were on our bikes.
Horse riding
every week.
We played every sport at school.
Every sport. To the point where the whole school wanted us to do a race, remember? That was so funny.
Like
the whole school was like, let's do a race. I won.
Yeah, we went to MLC and then we went to PLC.
Yeah.
And then you got really sick at age 11 and we were still there.
In PLC,
And then by the time it was year 8, and then at the end of year 8, we decided to
I got back from London from treatment, and
let's talk about that. So you went to London. What for?
So basically in the Royal Children's Hospital, there was one evening where I remember my body was really bad, and I remember just a voice there just saying, it's okay, you can stop breathing now. And so I just sort of relaxed and stopped breathing, basically.
How old were we then?
We were 11, and Mum was, next to me in the plastic chair.
Wasn't it when we were 12? Because it was just
I think
before
we were
turned
11.
13. Because I remember that.
No, because when I was we were 13. I remember being
8.
back home. It was year 7.
Okay, I thought, so year 7, right? Yeah, go on. So you had this voice in your head where you just were in so much pain. It's almost like you gave yourself permission to let go.
My body was so malnourished, and so my body had given up. And I remember a voice just saying, it's okay, just relax and stop breathing. And I remember Mum's voice just saying, Nicole, don't leave me. And she was pounding my chest to try and wake me up and calling the nurses. And it was very understaffed and it was very difficult time. So eventually the nurses came and they had to revive me. And that's a whole nother story that we'll need to talk about, another point of what happened with that experience. But so then I came back and then Dad did a lot of research in the medical library during that time because they were losing me. And eventually a couple of years later, we did find Professor Herman Taylor at the St. George's Hospital in London, where I did some experimental treatment, which allowed me to get off all the drugs that I was on.
So what was his protocol?
His protocol was erythromycin and erythromycin, high doses of antibiotics, basically, and a bit of chemotherapy.
To target tuberculosis,
yes,
right?
Correct. So So I did that.
But you didn't have a tuberculosis infection, but mum did at some stage.
When we were very young, very little, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was his idea, and we had nothing to lose. The best thing about it is it got me off all those drugs. So that was pretty hardcore. And then came back from London and was on oral medicine for another 2 years.
What oral medicine?
The erythromycin and
so the same protocol. You continued that,
or 2 antibiotics. Yeah, that I was on.
And do you think that is what helps you turn the corner? That treatment?
I think it certainly helped me not be as medicated. I would say it wasn't a cure, but it certainly helped.
In what way?
Getting me off all those other drugs that were killing me. They were killing me.
But you don't know whether the actual antibiotics actually targeted whatever may have been the issue.
We don't know, to be honest. We don't know. But I still had symptoms. So when I got back, I still had symptoms. Right. I wasn't bleeding as much, but I certainly still had massive bowel spasms and pain. So it was definitely a lot better. And I built some body mass and put some weight on until eventually I was watching TV late at night and I saw Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. So I called Dad and I said, Dad, I need to do the Tony Robbins tapes. This is with tapes before CDs.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, all right, darling. So he lent me some money to order the tapes, and I was doing the tapes, as well as I got Mum to go to the library every day or every week and just get a whole bunch of books because I wanted to research Crohn's myself because no one was researching it. I called the Crohn's Institution and no one was researching Crohn's. So I thought, right, I've got to research it. So I researched the liver cleansing diet. I don't know if you remember me doing that really obsessively. And then I did the Tony Robbins tapes and started working on my mind and nutrition and exercise. So that's when things started to change. And when you and I just forward tracking, so I worked very hard on my mind, which was the big piece of the pie. And when we started full-time dancing in 1999.
So let's just explain. So we finished year 12, guys, and then we went to university for a year, deferred and decided to pursue our dream of singing and dancing full-time, studying musical theatre and dance at Dance Factory.
And so once we did that for a good couple of months going in, massive exercise every day and doing what we loved, my symptoms completely went away. And
mindset's everything, isn't it? And when you bring in joy in your life and you're walking your talk, and
we were loving it. We were loving it. I mean, at first we was full on.
It's amazing though what it can do for healing in the body and repair.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then so you started to feel better, and that's when we were 19. And then how do you think you went from there into remission?
So then I, after doing working on my mind, working on my nutrition and exercise, my body started to stabilize, and then I started to get more out there into the world and work and do things and catch up with things, which really helped. And then I met my first love of my life at age 22. And I remember for a good 6 years, I just was well. I was taking care of myself. I was in love. I was working and just happy. And it was the best time of my life.
Yeah. And then and so how long has it been since you've had, we'll talk about an episode. What does a flare-up look like when you've got Crohn's disease for you?
Stomach cramps, bowel spasms, bleeding from the bowel is definitely
diarrhea.
So yeah, some people get constipation, some people get diarrhea.
That's right. Yeah.
So I would get either diarrhea or normal stools, but bowel spasms. So basically, you're in a contracted spasm, and even if you've gone, it feels as though you haven't finished, and then it continues. Just keeps spasms.
So when's the last time you went through a flare up? What year was it?
It was probably a big proper flare up was probably
before Dance Factory or after?
Before.
Yeah.
So you haven't I've had other physical symptoms that have manifested in different ways.
Like you still have pain in the body in your joints.
My joints have never been the same. Yeah. So I have joint issues.
So if you're stressed or you're not looking after yourself, you might
my body will get inflamed
feel
and it'll go to my joints.
Yeah, but not necessarily your small intestinal bowel.
No,
anymore.
my stomach has been really good, and it took 15 years. Took 15 years to train it.
Okay. So what if you were to name 2 or 3 things, if anyone else is experiencing Crohn's, that really helped you, that you would want to share, in terms of mind, body, spirit, what are the 3 things, or what are any things that you think someone living with Crohn's should do? A
lot of people who I talk to, who ask for advice, who have Crohn's, who come to me, we're all very anxious people. We're born anxious. So mindset, you've got to keep yourself, you got to work on your anxiety. So mindset, nutrition and exercise are the key things, and just being happy in what you're doing. But those are the 3 things.
Yeah. Beautiful. Great advice.
There's lots more, but those are the basics.
No, that's a good snapshot start. There's going to, obviously we're going to have so many podcasts. There's so many things to talk about. And if anyone finds any of this interesting, that's an awesome bonus too. So, I love sharing, because, we've been through a lot, and I think if it helps anyone, I know I've listened to podcasts before where I've just heard other people's experiences, and someone can say just one thing that actually changes everything for me. And that's why I love podcasts. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing, Nicole.
That's okay. So I remember you started to get some symptoms when you were 24, but it was really when you were 29.
No. When we were at Dance Factory when I was 19.
Yes, exactly.
Do you remember?
That's when there were some slight symptoms there.
We were 19. We were working at Chase's nightclub as well, part-time, and I went behind the bar to set up, and my boss Beck came and to speak to me, and I remember I couldn't feel the left-hand side of my face, and I was doing my mascara, applying it in the mirror, and I couldn't feel my eyelashes, and I started drooling, but I didn't even notice on the left-hand side of my face. So then I went to my GP the next day and checked it out, and he said, "Oh, this is concerning. It could be neurological. So I really recommend we get you in today to get an MRI and check it out." So I did that, and I got the results, and they found one tiny dot on my brain. I didn't really know what it was. So I just got on with my life. 5 years later, I had another experience where I was 24, and I experienced tingling and pins and needles on the left-hand side of my face, but this time my arm and my leg, but I was also feeling weakness there as well. So at 19,
I remember when we were at Dance Factory, when we were 19, we shared that car.
The Paseo.
No,
not the Paseo. It was Nissan Pulsar. It was a Nissan Pulsar.
That's a big story there as well, and how we sold it. But you found it hard using the clutch with your left foot.
So I must have been experiencing weakness and pins and needles then too. And so it got worse though. So 5 years later at age 24, I definitely felt like I was almost limping, and I was away in Queensland on holiday.
That's right.
And I felt like I was on a boat, and I was really frightened. So I was having another flare up, and I went and had another MRI, and it showed that I had 2 lesions on my brain, and I think one on the top of my spine near the balance area of the top of my spine.
That's right. And that's when you have multiple lesions, everyone, not just one, that's when they can actually
diagnose you with multiple sclerosis. Or I can do like a lumbar puncture as well, but you need multiple lesions.
That's right. And I remember I was working at Sun Lounge doing my business, and I remember the phone call, and you called, and you told me.
I told you. I can't even remember that.
And I dropped to the floor, and then the whole family, all of us, met at the Botanical Gardens.
It's our closest friends in our family. They just we all went to the Botanical Gardens, and I was just sitting on the grass staring out at the lake, contemplating and digesting that. And I remember when I got diagnosed, it was all in slow motion. I wasn't expecting it.
Same.
And Mum was there with me, and Claire, and we were all sitting there, and I remember crying immediately, and the first thing I said to my neurologist was, "Can I have a family?" And I didn't even realize that was important to me until the idea of it being washed away was a possibility. And he said, he was a great neurologist, and he said, some people live really, really normal lives. It could be benign, it could be early stages, and we just want to keep it that way. So yes, there's no, and I ran off in the other room and bawled my eyes out. So I was diagnosed at age 24. And from that moment on, what I remember looking back is everything, I was very stressed and, from the diagnosis, and I began to believe that I may not be okay. I started researching, although he reassured me I might be okay, I started to look into the disease. And MS is a disease of the central nervous system, the brain, spinal cord, and optic nerves. And my immune system is confused, thinks it needs to attack the myelin. So think of your phone charger. The white plastic section is the protective sheath that covers all of our nerves, and your body wants to attack it for some reason. Thinks there's something foreign there and it needs to attack. Exactly. Now your nerves are everywhere in your brain, spinal cord, and optic nerves, and that rushes out through into your nervous system out to the rest of your body. So when you have these episodes of flare-ups, that area becomes inflamed. And then when that happens, symptoms can include blindness, you can stop hearing, you can stop swallowing, you can have heat sensitivity, nerve pain, digestive issues, bladder and bowel issues are quite common, anxiety, depression, and paralysis.
Just stop the neuro pathways from working anywhere in your body.
Well, your brain's in control of everything. And so that's what can happen. And so understanding this being my reality, when I was young, I felt like I was a ticking time bomb, and I started to live my life as if I had to squeeze in everything I could before my body was going to supposedly fail me. Exactly. And so I wasn't looking after myself. I was emotionally so detached, and my body started to mirror how emotionally paralyzed I felt. And my actions started to mirror how emotionally paralyzed I felt too. Yeah. So I wasn't looking after myself. I went out later. I worked harder. And inside there was just this inner conflict that brewed, because I had goals in my life, such as, having a family and, being successful in business, just being a happy, healthy human being. And I felt like the idea of my possibility of me achieving all of those things might not be there. And mum even said, it's like you lost the spring in your stride. And so I wasn't looking after myself, and I really, what I know now looking back is, what we believe is what matters, and how we think and what we feel and what we believe is connected to our biochemistry. Correct. And in our biochemistry, we're either firing survival pathways of adrenaline and cortisol and inflammation and degeneration. But if we're not firing those pathways, we're firing growth and repair pathways instead. And if we're stressed and we're stuck in that survival stress response, and we don't believe that we're going to be okay, your body perceives threat and danger in the same way that it would if it has to run from a predator, including the way that we live our modern day lives of drinking coffee, watching the news. We're so wired and on all of the time. I know. So what I didn't realize was, like you, I think I was quite stressed, not as anxious as you as a child. I never really had the anxiety you had. No, but I think we went through a lot when we were younger, and our parents separated when we were 14 as well. And, we all were really happy when we were much younger, I think. But we went through stuff like any family does. We went through stuff. And also, I think that I didn't understand that then. So I was super stressed. And 5 years later, from 24 to 29, my worst fears were realized. And I had another relapse that paralyzed the entire left-hand side of my body. So draw a line down my body. My face dropped on the left side. My shoulder, arm, hand, hip, leg, and foot just totally stopped working. My arm twisted. It looked like a stroke. Yeah. And it took a slow, cruel 10 days to become paralyzed. So I went to hospital and I had 3 days of steroids to reduce the inflammation in my brain, but I still couldn't move. So then I had another dose, which lasted 5 days, but I wasn't responding to treatment. So I was then transferred to rehabilitation at Epworth Richmond, where I would live for 2 months. But first I sat in front of another doctor who then explained to me that I may never walk again. And that was the hardest news to take at age 29, when I was very driven and I was, launching my new startup in fashion. And I was, I seemed to be always a motivated, happy, driven young girl.
What's funny is that when you and I both get the similar news at different times in our lives, we were just like, and it's like, we didn't just like believe the doctors and go, oh, okay, that's what's going to happen. We were just like,
no, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to be that statistic.
It was just like, that's just not an option.
No, it's just not an option. No.
And, of course, everyone leads different. Everyone's different, but you and I definitely always had the mindset of, let's just try and work on that. So we were both very strong-minded.
Very motivated.
Concept of very motivated in that just wasn't going to.
It didn't kick in for me straight away though. Like I was quite frightened for a while. It was only when I was living in rehab and I was paralyzed, I hit rock bottom and I didn't know what else to do. And there was something inside of me that had to shift. And it was when I had no choice but to succeed. Yeah. And I remember going to my first rehab session and they gave me these exercises just to make my fingers open and close. And I had tears running down my face because it was so hard. And it was in that moment I knew I had a choice. I could either give up or I had to change my mind and my approach about what I believed could be possible to get different results. So before, when I wasn't sure and I was procrastinating and I was sabotaging and I didn't believe in myself or maybe that I would be well, I got worse and worse and worse because of the stress of that. Yeah. But in that moment, when everything shifted, I was like, no, I need to change this. And easier said than done.
There's always a pivotal moment.
Yes. And for me, it was when we all went out for dinner and all the girls came over, do you remember? And you put me in my wheelchair and we went across the road to the pub and we had dinner and we just laughed and laughed all together and just forgot about the 24/7 nightmare. And we were just present in the moment, experiencing such joy because it was just such a horrible time. And maybe the power of polarity of going through such despair, I was able to receive joy and to be present, which is actually our most creative state, by the way, being more present in the moment and just being together. I was receiving joy. I felt like it was absorbing in all of my cells and we were just laughing. And I can't remember the last time I laughed. And so I came back to my room. You went off to the bathroom in the ensuite and I screamed out to you because my toe moved for the first time. And it was in that moment I found hope. And as a result, I started to shift, focus my energy differently. I began to focus on what I wanted instead of what I didn't want. And maybe because I saw the evidence of, oh my God, it could happen, that then I had more courage and motivation and resilience to go, all right, now I can, because before it was too dark. It was like, what if it doesn't happen? What if I'm permanently disabled? You have to find the courage and resilience within you to keep going. When
I remember when I knew that it was, we were at home still and the beautiful Nicole came over to give you a massage and then we were in your ensuite and you were like, Nicole, what if it doesn't come back? And I said, it's not an option. And then I remember when you were, when I was washing you in the hospital, when I would shower you, and you would just, let me, and then I would start to every day go, you're doing your legs today. You're doing this today. And you were just like, and I'm like, no, you're doing this today. And you just were like a bit angry, but you were just like, okay. And then just to show you, of course, I know, but I had to show you that, there was an option. You got to try. And you did. And you showed yourself that you could.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? To never give up on yourself, and who we are in those moments is where you discover what you're made of. And
exactly.
And then when I did, so I was first in at physio, lastly became a woman on a mission, and I asked for every exercise possible, and they were motivated because I was motivated, the neurophysiotherapist, and then a kinesiologist came in and worked on me every few days as well, and I took a very balanced approach. And I took a very balanced approach, and I did Eastern and Western medicine. That's what worked really well for me. But like kinesiology is a modality that uses the structure of acupuncture and Chinese medicine to wake the nerve pathways up and muscles up faster, just using acupuncture points and amongst other things. But so doing that in conjunction with my neurophysiotherapy sessions, I walked and ran within 6 weeks.
I know, we couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was insane.
Although I could.
So I first started putting pegs into holes. Then I had to learn how to sit up again. I had to learn how to crawl again. I had to learn how to smile again because my face was crooked. I had to learn how to problem solve again.
How cool that we both had to do that.
Well, it's not that very cool at all, but it's
but it's pretty, it's very, sorry, it's not cool, but it is cool because as twins, we both had to learn how to use our muscles again. Like I remember going to my rehab and not even being able to sit on the floor and be able to get up. Not even being able to pick up a cup. I didn't understand how to do it. And just those basics again. I remember when Mum was walking me and I did one step and then the other foot rather than going 1-1, and we were just like, oh, like
those
just
moments.
Isn't that cool that we both have that?
Well, we've both rebuilt our
we
minds, bodies, and lives, which is why I wanted to.
But
do
not many
podcasts.
twins, I think, or sisters, or someone really close to you would go through the same.
Well, that's why I was so grateful that you were there with me, because we were really young when you were sick, and I wasn't allowed to be by your side because we were so young, and I was at school, and mum and dad didn't really understand that really I should have just been there with you. That would have been so much better. But you being there with me and staying with me in hospital and were there through those moments, and even sometimes slept next to me, like I just didn't feel alone. So I'm so grateful for that. And thank you so much for being there through the hardest time of my life. And I think that made an enormous difference. So the love and support from family and friends is really important, particularly in those moments when you give up on yourself. But I think when we go through adversity, who we become. So I think that when I was young, I didn't really believe in myself enough. And anything you and I have done, whether it's our music career, which we'll talk about in another podcast, but our music career, how we never really got out there and gigged enough, even though we wrote so many songs and, you know, we just created so much. So that lack of belief. But when I walked and ran again, it was the first time I really started to change my mind about what I believed about myself and what could be possible. Because when I was diagnosed with MS, it was just making a belief already true that was already there. See, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be able to do it. But I think I was already believing that before I got MS, and perhaps that contributed to that. I don't know. And so MS is also about control. So that your brain is about control. So when I'm stressed, I over control. And I forget to go with the flow. So all my work on MS and bending like bamboo, which is my business, is all about coming out of that rigidity to learn how to be more adaptable and less controlling in those ways, because you rob yourself of joy in your life if you're over controlling things, because it's about the spontaneity of not knowing what's coming next.
When you lose control of your body and you can't trust your own body, it's awful. It's very terrifying. And so you create these tiny little OCD things and patterns and behaviors to make yourself feel in control. And everyone's very different on how they do that. But
and that's why you've got OCD, which we're going to do another podcast on. We're going to talk about OCD in a whole nother podcast. It allowed me
to feel a sense of control of my life because I couldn't control my body or my external stuff. And so
I think both you and I have rebuilt our minds, bodies and lives, and I think that it would be great to hear from anyone out there listening that finds this interesting. If you want to know anything about emotions or nutrition or autoimmune disease, how to rebuild your mind, body and life, send us in what it is that you want to hear, because there's so much that we can talk about, and
there is a lot. But we will share more. That this kind of topic we would need to do a couple of podcasts on, and we can talk about next time maybe the nutrition and the supplementation and the treatments that we did do that helped us.
We'll talk about that for sure, and then mindset on a whole different one. But to round up, so this is my 12th year of clear MRIs,
I know.
And since that paralysis I haven't had another relapse yet.
I know.
I
don't say yet.
Well, I have no.
But I know. Just don't say it.
I
put it out there.
No, I haven't.
I have not had another.
No,
episode.
Thank goodness. I've had little flare-ups of existing things, such as sometimes my left side will go numb, but that's the same lesion that's there. So I'll have that for life. But they have reduced and they've shrunk, and I still take a very balanced approach. I've got
quite miraculous.
Actually, another thing that's really important is to have a neurologist or a doctor that really supports your approach. And for me, my approach was very balanced, and I needed my neurologist to really support that.
That's so important, because my first doctor, we won't name names, like my first doctor who I adored, got me through the really tough bit. When I came back from London, politically for reasons, unfortunately wasn't able to treat me on the new treatment. So I found another beautiful gastroenterologist who did. And
you've got to find the right doctor,
the doctor who understands all aspects of what you want to do in your own treatment and your approach.
And you've also got to take the reins and take responsibility for your own condition and the advice from the specialist, but don't trust that they're going to know everything.
No, so many people know so many different aspects. Don't think that one person is the God and the answer, because that's not the case. You find out your own information from many different people. Go with your gut instincts, because you always know what's right for you and your body.
And it's a journey, and
it is a
part
big
of it.
Journey,
and who you become through that is what will help you to transform any limiting beliefs or old stories. Like, I think that illnesses can be an absolute awakening, and
they certainly are.
what we go through in any times of adversities, like whether it's illness or change in our lives, divorce or death, it's, if we're building daily.
It also brings you back to the basics of really what means the most, just to be able to feed yourself, just to be able to put on your heels like you wanted to do.
I think we're all going through that now, like even through the lockdown.
And now
it's helped us to get back to the basics.
That's right.
Keeping, like, stripping things back. And there's nothing but, I think Nicole and I are going to have nothing but good things to say about that, because we've experienced that when we were younger with our illnesses. So we kind of, I took all those learnings into this lockdown, because it is a bit of a time to strip back and get back to basics. And that can generate a lot of joy and happiness if you see it that way. And coming out again, as we're about to approach in about a couple of days, 3 days time.
I know.
In Melbourne, we're coming out of our longest lockdown in the world ever. It's going to be a great rebirth of taking all those new learnings and recreating and rebuilding.
I find it interesting how so many people are like, let's go do this, let's go do this, let's go do this. It's like, hang on, just chill, we're not ready. And also just to do baby steps of getting back out there and thinking, well, some people will go, what I'm trying to say is some people go straight back into their old routine.
And
think that's going to work. It might for some, but
you want to capture and bottle the learnings, and you're becoming a whole new version of yourself. So allow that to integrate into the new world. And go, oh, look at me going into my old ways, old patterns. Do I want to do that? And now is an opportunity. You are more creative and adaptable than ever, because you're going through a whole new routine again.
Just don't go into your default system of, well, that worked, I'm going to do that.
You want to leverage that, exactly, so that you can bring in these new habits and patterns. We are our most adaptable state ever. So really cool podcast today. I'm really glad that we spoke about this, and I hope that what we spoke about and shared helps you guys to realize that you can truly overcome anything that you're going through.
You truly can. You truly can.
And discover what you're made of.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you guys. If you love the podcast, make sure you subscribe and share the love, because we want to get this out to as many people as possible. We're brand new. And send us information. You can comment in the podcast. We should set up an email, Nicole. We're going to have a YouTube, our own YouTube channel, and you can comment in there. Otherwise, my email is amanda@amandacampbell.com.au, and Nicole's is nicole@mienbrows.com. And you guys can send us emails about what you want to hear, and we would love to talk about it.
Sounds good.
All right, Nicole. Thank you so much.
Have a beautiful afternoon.
And you too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.